Hi everyone, I'm Dina with Mills Family Gardening. We live in North Texas, Zone 8A. It's hard to believe that we're almost in September, and in this video we'll be talking about what we can plant, buy seed, outdoors, indoors, and transplant in the month of September. Our average first frost date is beginning of November, but of course it varies from year to year. But in any case, we still have plenty of time to start a lot of vegetables and flowers by seed. So what vegetables can we start by seed outdoors? First, let's talk about root vegetables, and those are carrots, beets, parsnips, radishes, turnips, rutabaga. We can also start the following leafy greens by seed outdoors, and those are Swiss chard, arugula, lettuce, spinach, kale, and collard greens. We can also start herbs in the month of September by seed outdoors, and those are dill, parsley, cilantro, leeks, and oregano. And all these vegetables and herbs can be started by seed outdoors all throughout the month of September. Also in September, we can still plant the seeds of hollyhock straight into the ground. And all these vegetables, greens, and flowers and herbs can be started by seed outdoors throughout the month of September. Now let's talk about the first half of September. And during that time, we can plant by seed outdoors bush beans and peas. Now in the second half of September, we can plant outdoors garlic and onions. Also closer to the end of September, we can start the following flowers by seed outdoors: larkspur, rudbeckia, sweet peas, almi, poppies, centaurea, buplerium, nigella. Now we have to keep in mind that here in North Texas, September can still stay pretty hot. It can stay in the high 90s or mid 90s or even in the 100 degrees Fahrenheit. For that reason, some seeds, for example spinach seeds, won't germinate at that temperature, and for that you can start the seeds indoors, and as soon as you notice the first sprouts appear, you can simply bring the seeds outside in the dappled shade area and keep those seeds there. They will be growing just fine. Just make sure to water them well and keep the soil moist at all times. Now let's talk about what seeds we can plant indoors throughout the month of September, and those are lettuce, spinach, kale, collard greens, Swiss chard, mustard greens, beets, pretty much all the seeds that you can start outdoors throughout the month of September. You can start the same vegetables and flowers by seed indoors just to avoid the high temperatures and make sure that germination is much better. Now, I would not start carrots by seed indoors simply because it's harder to transplant them outside. So even if the temperatures are still hot outside, it is possible to plant carrot seeds in the ground and keep them moist, and when the temperature is much cooler and right for the seeds to germinate, they will germinate. Just make sure that you don't bury them under a thick layer of soil, because that will definitely prevent their germination. During the month of September, certain insects are very active, and those insects are harlequin beetles and grasshoppers. Grasshoppers can simply decimate all your seedlings simply because they love those tender sprouts. So you can protect your seedlings from grasshoppers by using an insect mesh. You can create a hoop tunnel, or you can put sticks in the ground in a few spots and then cover those sticks with small water bottles so that the insect mesh wouldn't get ripped. Also, harlequin beetles are very active and they prefer all the vegetables and cabbage family like Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage. So make sure to protect those seedlings from those pests also by using an insect mesh. Now let's talk about what vegetables and flowers we can transplant throughout the month of September. And those vegetables are lettuce, spinach, kale, collard greens, mustard greens, Swiss chard, and also all the vegetables in the cabbage family like cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. We can also transplant flowers throughout the month of September, and those are marigolds, zinnias, cosmos, and hollyhock. Now let's talk about what we can transplant only in the second half of September. So even if you missed the first half of September, there's still a chance to transplant certain flowers in the second half of September. All perennials can be planted in the ground in the second half of September, because normally the second half of September is much cooler and the plants that will be moved into the ground won't go through so much shock and stress from high temperatures, but also make sure to water them daily if there is a need. Also in the second half of September, you can transplant into the ground the following flowers: marigolds, zinnias, cosmos, foxglove, dianthus, strawflower, stock, delphinium, snapdragons, feverfew, poppies, calendula, eryngium, rudbeckia, statice, aster or Chinese aster, ami, and bells of Ireland. In other words, all the flowers that we started by seed back in August, it's time for them to be transplanted outside in September. But before you transplant them in the ground, make sure you harden them off because the sun is pretty harsh even at the end of September. So make sure you harden them off for a week or a couple of weeks in a dappled sun area. Just keep them there, make sure they don't get strong afternoon sun, and they should be okay to be transplanted into the ground. And we made a full video on how we harden off our seedlings in the simplest and easiest way, where I don't bring the seedlings in and out. I just keep them outside, even in early spring and in the fall. So we'll put that video in the description. Now let's talk about what other garden-related jobs we can do in the month of September. In September, we can order garlic online if you don't plan to grow store-bought garlic. Normally, I simply use store-bought garlic and grow that. Here in North Texas, we grow softneck garlic. Hardneck garlic is grown better in cooler climate. Softneck garlic grows much better here in North Texas. And I've always used store-bought garlic. It grows well, but the downside is that you can only grow the variety that they sell at the store. So if you would like to grow more interesting varieties, you can certainly order them online. In the past, I ordered garlic, organic garlic. I think it was California giant garlic on eBay, and it was shipped promptly. It was fresh. It was really good quality. Also in September, we can order spring blooming bulbs like tulips, hyacinths, daffodils, and alliums. If you decide to grow tulips and order them online, I prefer ordering pre-chilled bulbs. That way I don't have to keep them and store them in the fridge. If you order tulip bulbs that are not pre-chilled and plant them in the ground, then they will grow short and they won't have really beautiful blooms. You can certainly order non-pre-chilled bulbs and chill them in your own fridge, but they usually take up so much space in our refrigerator is not that large that I prefer to order pre-chilled bulbs. With daffodils, alliums, and hyacinths, they don't need to be pre-chilled, so you can order any bulbs. Just make sure that daffodil bulbs are suitable for our climate. Our springs can get really warm, and that can affect the quality of blooms. So make sure you buy a variety of daffodils that are more suitable for warmer climates. This is something that I normally do in October, but the end of September is also okay to order online or purchase at Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot, wherever you can find them, ranunculus corms. October is a great time to plant those ranunculus corms. They will sit through the winter and they will start sprouting in late winter or early spring. I grew ranunculus like that a couple of years ago. I did not pre-soak them. I simply planted them in the ground and they all came up, and then we had that terrible winter when our temperature went down all the way to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I did not cover them, and the old leaves that already grew, they did die after the freeze, but the corms themselves stayed alive in the ground, and when it warmed up, new leaves started growing. Now, we do have a fence here, houses and trees, so we have a microclimate that stays pretty warm. Whereas if it's an open field, I'm sure it's much colder there, and most likely I would have to cover those corms. September is a great month to prepare your beds for fall planting. Here in our backyard, we have heavy red clay soil, and we like to use compost and manure that we buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. We like to use mushroom compost and cow manure in those yellow bags. They work just fine for us. Some people like to use expanded shale. That works well also, even though we have not used that too much. We simply spread 3 inches of compost or composted cow manure on top of our clay soil and mix it with the native soil, and it works well. We even grow carrots, a decent size, in our clay soil. The month of September can still be hot, so make sure to water your plants, flowers and vegetables and fruit. Also make sure to fertilize your plants so they would be strong and produce well when the temperatures cool down. And also make sure to keep your garden beds mulched. Mulch retains moisture. It also makes the soil cooler. It helps your vegetables a lot. For mulch, we like to use cedar mulch. It also repels a lot of unnecessary insects from our beds. But you can use any kind of mulch as long as it doesn't have any artificial dyes and perfumes. You can even use shredded cardboard on your garden beds. We like to use the used bedding from our guinea pigs, and for their bedding we use shredded pine. That works perfectly. So anything that you can find at stores that's cheap, affordable, just use that. There are certain plants that are very susceptible to flea beetles. Eggplant is one of them, and also ground cherry. Flea beetles love chewing on their leaves, and then that deprives leaves from getting enough sunlight, and that prevents plants from photosynthesizing, and eventually they die. So for those bugs, I would use BT or spinosad. I personally like to use spinosad, and I've had a really good experience with it, so I usually use that. I don't even have any BT at home. If the temperatures are still high in the 90s or even 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you can use shade cloth, which is 40% shade cloth. That percentage allows plants to still bloom and produce fruit, but at the same time it protects plants from harsh sun rays. And also September is a good time to let some of your plants reseed. Like I'm gonna let my cucumbers reseed. I'm gonna let Rudbeckia reseed, and for that I'm simply gonna leave a yellow cucumber that's overly ripe on the plant, and when the time is right it will drop on the ground, the seeds will stay on top of the ground, and it will stay like that through the winter. And then in the spring, when the temperature is right, those seeds will sprout, and then I will have free cucumber plants without putting any effort into starting new seeds indoors. With flowers like Rudbeckia or zinnias, you can simply take the dead flower with all the seeds inside of the flower, and you can plant the dead flower anywhere you want in the garden, and when it rains, the temperature is right, that flower will start sprouting all those seeds. Even though it hasn't been a bad year temperature-wise, I'm still looking forward to cooler fall temperatures when we can grow a larger variety of vegetables and flowers. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you, and happy gardening!